Hey, what's up everyone, TJ here, and welcome to my review of the Bataleon Cameleon snowboard. Let's get into it. Alright y'all, real quick for your reference before I jump into the specs. I'm 5'10", I weigh around 155 pounds, and I tested the Cameleon in size 157. And if you're curious about any of my other gear that I'm running, everything is linked down below this video for you. So the Cameleon is an all mountain focused board on the Bataleon lineup. It's the first time I've been able to try it. It's only the second season it's been on their line, and it does have a directional design to it. So you're gonna find a noticeably longer nose up front outside the contact points. I think the nose is like 2 or 3 times longer than the tail. The amount of material outside the contact points does have a noticeably directional outline. It does not have a setback though. They keep the reference stance centered on this snowboard for a little bit of a more freestyle-y feel, but it does run a decent taper. You're gonna find 14 millimeters of taper in the Cameleon, so the tail is a little bit narrower than the nose of the snowboard. And it does, of course, run the staples from Bataleon. You're gonna find a full traditional camber profile, contact point to contact point, giving you that energetic camber feel. And it has a decent amount of camber to it. It runs Bataleon's medium camber, so there's a decent bit of bend to it. And it, of course, runs Bataleon's triple base technology, or 3BT. So there's some 3D shaping going on with this snowboard, specifically in the nose and tail, kind of outside your feet, where you're gonna notice it kind of reaches the most 3D shape, kind of right around the contact points here. And basically the base and edge is beveled up, making the board super catch free. So Bataleon calls this their center base down the middle here in the nose. It's gonna be flat like a regular snowboard. And then the side base that kind of uplifts up and gives you that signature 3BT feel. And with the Cameleon here, the center base is a little bit narrower, which I think makes the board a little bit looser if you're pressed into it, but does give it a nice benefit in soft snow conditions. It's gonna help displace powder much more efficiently. You're also gonna get a ton of carbon built into the layup of this snowboard. It runs straight carbon stringers in the layup, as well as 6 carbon radial super tubes, kind of running with the radius of the side cut here. Just gonna help get the most out of this snowboard energy-wise, help amplify that pop and work with that camber, give you that extra spring when you need it, as well as their flex walls, urethane sidewalls that help dampen out the ride and just smooth things out a little bit for all mountain exploring. Urethane is the same material that skateboard wheels are made out of, so it's gonna help absorb vibrations and smooth things out overall. It also runs this interesting piece of tech you can see here through the top sheet in the tail. They call it their flex tail. So there's actually like a small piece of urethane kind of in the center here, just in the tail of the snowboard, that gives it a little bit of a more dynamic feel torsionally. So there's a little bit more to play with in the tail when you're out there making turns. You can try to really drive power through that and play with that flex a little bit. And this thing also runs a high-end sintered base. Of course, a base you want to wax regularly so it stays nice and fast, but it's a dense base material and it's durable and faster than an extruded base. So that's it for the tech breakdown here on the Cameleon. Let's talk about how this thing felt at the resort. Let's start the review talking about the overall flex and feel you're gonna find with the Cameleon. And I would say this board sits at roughly a mid flex, or potentially even just a little on the softer side of medium. It is a fairly playful snowboard in my opinion. It has more of a freestyle feel to it than an all mountain feel flex wise. But I think you can really have a lot of fun playing around with that personality and this type of design and geometry. So when it comes to like butters and flat tricks, I think the most noticeable thing you're gonna find is that 3BT. I will say the slightly narrower 3BT, that slightly narrower center base that you find on the Cameleon, does make it a little bit trickier to find that sweet spot leaning into the nose or tail. It can feel a little bit too loose sometimes if you are maybe leaned more towards your toe or heel and you're kind of getting on that side base. Something that I think when you spend a lot of time on Bataleons, you get used to it and you can actually enjoy playing around with it. But at first you might be like, whoa, like I feel like I'm gonna wash. But there's a different pressure balance point, like a different sweet spot rather, to get that edge to activate and really start to feel when things start to catch and feel when things are nice and loose. So I think that combined with the flex makes this board a lot of fun for playing with butters and ground tricks. It's so catch free and still gives you good pop. I think that softer flex does work with the camber and the carbon to load up a lot of potential energy and give you some good snap. All right, moving on. Normally in these reviews, I would talk about how this thing feels in the park. But I gotta be honest with you guys, I rode this board very late season and I only did a few hikes and just like a late season hike park with some boxes. So I'm gonna make a promise to you right now here in this video. I'm gonna take this board out early season as soon as the full park is up at Copper and just do a full park video on the Cameleon and fill this thing out. I'm also gonna get it out in the backcountry this year and do a bit of a powder test on it. But with that preface, I'll say this board does feel like a jibbier park board. I don't think the directionality is gonna get in your way too much. And I know I was able to get a tail press that felt pretty good. I think it did a nose press as well right at the end of the day. And definitely has that jibbier vibe to it, but we'll have to circle back and just do like an in-depth park feel early this season, probably looking like mid-December, I'd say. And when it comes to carving and ripping around the resort on the Cameleon, I thought it held up pretty well, especially given the like heavy grabby snow condition. I was able to power through that decently well, but is definitely in that stability range where the snow is going to be able to push the board around a little bit, especially in those like heavy slushy conditions. I think for the most part, it's going to be a lot of fun cruising around the resort and not really going to be on your mind too much. But definitely is a board that can get overpowered, you know, going through some like chunder with speed, or you know, with like the real variable condition that you find in like late season slush, end of day slush and things like that. I do still want to mention the side cut and waist width at this size. So at 157, you're going to get a pretty wide chassis out of the Cameleon, above average for sure at 26 centimeters. So it's going to increase the overall surface area of the snowboard, which I think is going to help it out a lot in softer snow, and also makes it a lot more fun for getting it on edge. So especially on like the slushy day we had, I think that really allowed me to drive through carbs with a lot more power, be a little bit more aggressive out there without having to worry about my toes dragging. I do wear a size 8.5 boot, but the width does help. And Bataleon does make their wides very wide. So if you do run a big boot size and you want to get a Bataleon, definitely look at their wide options. And the Cameleon runs a pretty tight side cut. It runs a 6.8 meter side cut, so it's going to give you those more exciting, quick, nimble carves. I think that matches the personality of the board well, because it's really fun to carve even at more moderate speeds with that tighter side cut. All right, overall, I think the Cameleon sits in a pretty unique space where it really has the character of like a proper freestyle board. It feels very similar, almost like an evil twin, kind of like flex and energy wise, and just with the overall personality. But then you have all this directional geometry and design to play with. So I think that makes it a lot more versatile for just all around resort riding, especially in more variable snow conditions. So I think this is going to be a really solid choice if you are that rider that likes to spend a lot of time in the park and you like it in freestyle, but you also like the idea of having some aspects of your snowboard that are actually going to improve your riding in other areas as well. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the powder test. I think this thing has such a cool shape. The 3BT, the chopped tail, the width. I think it's going to be really fun getting it out in the backcountry this year. And I'm stoked to do a proper park day as well. So don't miss those videos. They're going to be coming soon. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, drop them down in the comments for me. If you got some value, make sure to drop a like before you go. Subscribe to the channel before you leave. Thanks, y'all.